This is Managing Mayhem.
Brought to you by two lawyers and a layman.
Because good intentions are not a legal defense.
Wait, I'm sorry, they're not? Okay, well, let's get going then. Hello, and welcome to Managing Mayhem with Patty, Jeff, and Jack. What's up, you guys?
What's happening?
It's great to see you guys. How you doing?
I just had a cookies and cream protein bar, and the flavor won't leave my mouth, and it's not welcome anymore.
Those things are like paste.
Oh no!
They taste like paste. They're horrible.
Like a weird space food.
Truly, it's not quite a solid. It's not quite a liquid. And it's not quite Jack, enjoyable.
That does remind me, Rob and I this week are having our 39th wedding anniversary.
Woo.
Yeah. And I will say the reason I knew he was the guy for me is because kind of the space food concept when he told me he wishes he could just take a little tablet for meals. He doesn't like cooking. And I was like, perfect. I suck at cooking.
Like I can't cook anything.
Seriously.
And now all of your children can't cook anything.
Sorry.
We're all screwed. It's like,
you want grilled cheese with a Kraft single? I can do that.
I know. It's like when you're dating somebody, it's truly like I have a week of meals to show them that I can cook. 3 of which are different kinds of eggs.
That's
impressive.
Right.
3 of which are different kinds of eggs. 1 salmon, and then the other one is, drum roll, the frozen veggie burgers.
Oh yeah, love them.
Oh no.
They're good. Lots of protein as well. Okay,
so aside from that, what are we talking about today?
Yeah,
today, Tony was terminated. Now what do we do?
Well, listen, Tony, we had a good run.
Right.
It was all fun and games until you ate some edibles and showed up to the major meeting.
And it's always all fun and games until the edible
until it kicks in halfway through the meeting, and all of a sudden, Tony, we gotta let you go. And he's in the room right now. He's sitting there, slightly confused, eyes glazed over,
drooling a little bit.
Right.
And now we have that awkward transition of how to get Tony from point A to point B, from conference room out the front door.
And then what do we have to do, right? What do you have to do as a manager to make sure you wrap everything up with Tony as far as...
You dangle a Potbelly sub in front of him and just kind of get him to follow right out to the parking lot.
You're going to go home, and then we'll deal with all the paperwork and your stuff later.
And he's not even really that upset that he's been terminated because he has a weird smile on his face.
Smile.
He's got a little secret. Okay, so you've terminated Tony.
Right.
Now what do you do? He has your stuff. You have his stuff. Do you pay him? Do you hug him? Do you...
Don't hug him.
What do you do?
Don't hug him.
Well, the first thing you want to do is call a cab.
Yeah,
because
get him
you're
out
not
the
going to
door.
let him drive home.
Right.
Right. Okay. Flash
But there's
cab
a lot
is
to
great
do,
one.
for sure, right? There's a lot that you have to kind of wrap up. So.
Okay, so what do you... let's start with pay. What do you do with the payment? Do you have to pay him at all? If you do have to pay him, when do you have to pay him?
You do have to pay him. It depends. The timing of it does depend, A, on what state you're in, and B, whether they quit or were fired or terminated.
Okay.
Whether you separated the employment or not.
Yeah. This is one where you really have to look at the state law where that person's working. Okay. And some state, they vary all over the place. For example, California, Montana, immediately if you fire them.
Right.
Utah, if you fire them 24 hours. Idaho, it's going to be the same if they quit or are fired. It's the next pay period or 10 days, whichever comes first. They're really complicated final pay laws.
And Idaho as well. If they request it, then you got to pay them within 48 hours, right?
Right.
Oh.
Yeah.
I'm requesting payment now.
We have to earn it first, Jack.
Right.
But Jeff, don't you see that as a problem where people are like, guess what, who we just fired? And you're like,
right. Sometimes if you know you're going to terminate the person, then definitely think ahead as far as, okay, it's the state that they're located in as well. It's not just where the company is. So if they're a remote worker, you have to know where they're located. But if you have the luxury to know ahead of time that you're going to terminate the person, you have that paycheck ready,
right?
Or be prepared to give it to them based on whatever state laws.
Right.
We've had that paycheck ready for you, Jeff, since we started.
Right.
We had a feeling.
It's in my back pocket every
It's
day.
in my back pocket, just in case.
Okay, so you have to know your own state law or the law for the place that your employee's working if they're working remotely.
Correct.
Right.
Hell yeah.
Good job.
And one thing I see a lot of companies get confused on is direct deposit or writing a check.
I am very confused on direct deposit
like which
in
way,
general.
like do we have to do direct deposit? And really you have to abide by the state law. And so if
Okay.
your direct deposit takes a couple days and you're in California and you got to give it to them that day, then you got to write them a good old check.
Yeah.
Do
Hand it to them.
you ever
You have
do
to cut a hard check. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the way it is.
and you take it to the bank.
So the takeaway on this section of the termination process is think about it before you fire them. Look at your final
Yep.
pay law. Important to know it and be ready to pay them. So that's the first and foremost on that.
Exactly.
Okay.
Okay.
Once they're paid, whenever they need to be paid, what do you do with the final step, which is always painful in any breakup, which is what if Tony has your property? What if he had a home office? What if he has your favorite hoodie? How do you get it back?
Or your
Yeah.
laptop.
Or just your laptop or codes.
Right.
Passwords.
Keys.
It really is rare that you're going to fire someone and then they just have everything on them,
Right.
like to turn in.
Hey,
I'm always expecting to be
Tony,
fired.
Tony, we just want to have a one-on-one meeting with you on Friday at 4:00. So if you could just bring in like your computer and your keys,
Your scanner.
right? And your
That
phone,
scanner we lent ya.
Yeah,
I love it. Tony's like, sum up.
Sure.
No, we're just doing
Tony's-
some antivirus on it. New IT program.
Tony's
so
like mid edible. Like, what else do you need me to bring? Want me to bring cupcakes?
I got some hot pockets.
Want a hot dog?
And make sure you drive your company car with you.
Bring the
Right.
keys.
So yeah, this is going to be a rare situation where they have everything. So you're right, Jack. It's that awkward. How do we get it back?
Right. So a lot of companies, especially as we've had a lot of hybrid workers, people have home offices, so they do have stuff at home or they have keys and whatnot. And so as far as computers, you need to make sure you lock them out of the computer prior to the termination. If you know you're going to terminate them, lock
Right.
them out prior, not after. So when they go back to their office or they go home and they just rip off some zingers to
Email to
everybody.
all.
Burn book style.
Right.
And you also have to turn off their credit cards, block
Yep.
access to that prior to the termination. So again, some of these, Tony, you may not have thought about that, but you need to do it immediately after.
Right.
You don't want him getting back to his computer. So
Okay.
Now, if they have the stuff at their house, you're gonna need to arrange a time for them to come into the office to drop it off. And so I would pick a time that's not busy.
Right.
I would definitely have 2 people be there to collect it, especially if the person's just been fired. Right. It's like they
Yeah.
may not be the
Be happy?
happiest, and so you want to not just have HR there or just the manager. Probably have both of them there to collect everything.
And
Right.
someone with a larger physical stature than you.
Exactly.
Right.
That's what I did with my all high school breakups. I
What,
brought
you also
Jeff.
had a buff friend go with you?
And wait, why am I here?
I had a client that had, like code blue, code red. They'd have paging Dr. Strong when they needed someone who was physically strong to help with the security issue.
We could all use a Dr. Strong.
One thing I
not
wouldn't
one.
do is go to their house. And this is
Right.
one I've seen on
God, no.
multiple occasions where some HR person says, oh, I'm just going to go over there and demand it and show up and say, may I have the items right now? You don't want to go to their house. There's no need to go
Okay.
to their house. You want to find either have them bring it back or find a neutral location where they meet you with someone else with you.
With
And
Mr. Strong.
The only
Yeah.
exception is if you have something big like an industrial sized printer where you have
Right.
to arrange a mover. But other than that, I don't want you just showing up at their door.
Right, and you should be asking questions why they have the industrial size printer
At their home.
at their office, at their home office.
It does seem weird. It's showing up for any time at anyone's house uninvited. Is
Yeah.
just
Yeah, not okay.
amazing.
Well, even a lot of times the person's just like, "Well, just come pick it up then. I'm not coming," And so it's
Oh.
like, "What? No."
Yeah, you're like, well, no, we
like-
can't.
Right.
Okay, so you bring the printer to the Starbucks drive-through. push it through the window.
Give them a frappuccino.
Get a frappuccino and get the hell out of there. And what if they refuse to give it back? Can you take it out of their pay? Like a library book or a high school textbook?
No, first of all, you can't hold the final pay. A lot of people are like, well, we're just not going to pay him his final paycheck until we get our stuff back. And you can't do that. You have to pay the final pay. Deductions are different. You got to check your state, make sure that you can actually get an authorization to deduct. You have to have an authorization to deduct, and it needs to specify what and when.
Okay.
Some states, like Idaho, you have to have that signed written authorization to deduct. Some states you can't even do it with that. But Jack, when you mentioned about library fines, the reason that I got in the habit of having people hide when the doorbell rings when I get nervous is we used to, when I was growing up, a librarian would come to your home if you owed money, even if it was 50 cents, 75 cents, or to get the books
Here
back.
to collect.
Knock, knock, knock.
It was scary. It was really scary. We'd run around.
I either need $1.50 or I need that Nancy Drew novel back. So get it.
Or I feel like they could be sometimes like, you owe $70 for that textbook.
Well,
No.
Also, I think the hiding, the family hide when someone comes to the door is another therapy session.
That's a different episode.
Yeah.
Okay, so going back to it, if they refuse, say, you know what, if you want the keys to the property, you have to get them. If you don't have an authorization to deduct, which I would get one if you are in a state that it's allowed for rekeying fees, you're going to have to send them a demand letter. And in that demand letter, I wouldn't be nice. I'd say something like, well, if you refuse to return the keys, which you have, we've asked multiple times.
We'll burn down your house.
I'm sending the 1960s librarian after you.
Right. I'm sending your high school librarian.
And then we'll burn down the house.
Jesus.
No, but I would say, but then if you're going to be a prime suspect, if there's a break-in, or we're going to call the police, because you're actually engaging in theft now. So to me, I would give a pretty stern demand letter, and if they don't return it, then what, Jeff? What would you do besides burn their house down?
Yeah, Jeff really wants to burn someone's house down.
I want to hear from Jeff, the public defender. I want to hear the words.
You gotta call the police.
Call the police.
You'd file a report with the police saying, "Hey, this is what they have. This is the value," and then
it's an expensive
let
printer.
The police deal with it.
Yeah, let's say Tony has his own personal property at the office. He's taking the cab home. He's laying down in the back, and you go in his office. He has plants that you realize are not
plants,
just plants. They're recreational plants.
They're not the Canadian maple leaf he told you about.
Yeah, exactly. Tony's a liar in multiple ways. So what do you do with his things that you have?
And this is where I think there's some dignity. You want to make sure you're respectful to people. If the person is there and you're going to have them pack up, I would only do it. Make sure you're doing that termination at the end of the day. Tony, obviously, we didn't have a choice. It was midday. So think about that if you are planning ahead, so you can terminate them so they have some private time to pack up at the end of the day. If not, I would have him obviously go home and arrange a time to come back later.
We're talking about giving them some dignity, right? As far as like packing it up, but also you want to make sure that they don't make a scene, right? And a lot of times when people are terminated, they're pretty upset. And so what you don't want is them to storm into their office, be passive aggressive, kind of, speaking under their...
Or just aggressive.
Right, or just aggressive.
You're all just pawns. Wake up.
Cogs in the machine.
Knocking people's plants off their desks.
Right. And so, like, if you have to use your judgment, but if that's going to be the scene, then you send them home, and then you either pack it up and give it to them later, or... I
prefer to get them off site, Jeff, for me. I think it's always a scene. It's always awkward. Or they take too long, like 5 hours to go through every memorabilia that they left there.
Right.
So I like to coordinate for them to come back later for me, unless it's at the end of the day. If they work there, Tony's going home now. He needs to feel better. We'll figure it out later. So.
Okay.
Right. And so, when we talk about the coordination, I mean, they're now off site. What I would say is you go in, you collect all their stuff, and then you just arrange a neutral place, the Starbucks, get your Frappuccino, make the exchange, give them your
slow
stuff.
Hostage swap.
Right. Once again, you've got another employee with you. You got Mr. Strong with you.
Yep.
Or HR
behind a newspaper.
Right, and you give them their stuff
Put the printer
back,
down
right?
slowly.
This is
we'll give
such
you the
an
frappuccino.
awkward. It is like a hostage swap, where everyone's very nervous. Like, put the money down, everyone
Right.
back up. Yeah, so I think your two options are to coordinate and schedule time later, or have someone there, or pack it up and send it to them. You could send it via messenger, third party, meet at a location. But you're also looking for safety. You want to make sure people are upset after they're terminated, stoned or not. And so we want to minimize any safety risk to people. So
Right. Okay. And with like larger odd objects, like if you have like a large, let's say a large fig plant or something.
No,
if you worked at the company a long time, I mean, you might have sort of
this
moved in,
happens.
feng shui
No, it's
the whole
true.
thing.
It's true. They have like I've seen one where they have like a large plant in a massive like pot. Or like they have furniture. They brought in their own couch or a futon or whatever. They were going through a rough time with their wife, but they have stuff at the house, at the office that you got to get out. And so, I mean, obviously you want to get rid of that stuff, get it back to them sooner than later, because what happens is these people, the former employees, they say, hey, well, you damaged this. Now you owe me money, or this wasn't in the condition I left it in. And so you want to avoid those claims. So I would make it quick. Set a time frame, and sometimes I would put the burden on them to actually coordinate moving it.
Right.
It's
after
not your
hours,
problem.
It's like, okay, you can come in with, because you don't want to be transporting some massive vase and then it breaks, right? And all of a sudden they're like, you owe us a lot of money.
I would give them a tight time frame. You have 5 days to get this off, or we're going to donate it. Do I sound mean? I mean, we're going to donate it or throw it away. And then also another thing to protect yourself when people saying you stole property, or I would have someone come in and inventory. If you are packing it up and you are sending a messenger, I would just inventory, what you are sending to them. But it is not your responsibility they have to get it within a short period of time or else it's done.
Okay. So can you say that to them, like, you have this time frame, and then if you don't do it within that time frame, we will donate it, or?
Yep. Totally reasonable.
Okay. This is awkward conversation. So you have to pay them in accordance to the law wherever they work. And then you do not get to hold their stuff hostage. They don't get to hold your stuff hostage. You make a quick agreement of the exchange. Do it very quietly, carefully, and with a third party. And then just say, thank you, Tony.
May the force be with you.
Have a great
life.
Godspeed, Tony.
Godspeed.
Have a good life, and you're not welcome to reapply, but we wish you well in the future. All right.
Absolutely.
Okay, so Tony's been terminated. We know what to do. If you guys have any questions, give us a call. And
it's always an awkward time, but send us your stories of the weirdest things people have left, or you've had to go give them.
Because we're just interested.
Yeah, we're not even going to talk about it. We just want to see. Things are a little bleak out here.
All right, guys. Hope you have a great week, and it's mayhem free, and you don't have to do a lot of terminations.
Please, no terminations. Bye-bye.
Have a great week.
Managing Mayhem is presented by Management Northwest and Management Southwest and cannot be copied or rebroadcast without prior written consent. By listening to this podcast, you understand that we, or at least two of us, are lawyers, but we are not your lawyers. Therefore, nothing we say on the podcast should be taken as legal advice or considered to create an attorney-client relationship. It is solely meant for your educational and informational purposes. The podcast should not be used as a substitute for legal advice from an attorney licensed in your state. Please be aware that listening to lawyers can cause side effects such as migraine, self-doubt, and also may cure insomnia. But you know what? Trust your own judgment, or you're not your mom.